I don't even know how to introduce this topic.
We could go with Neil Young,
Neil Young.
or The Needle and the Spoon, The Needle and the Damage Done, a famous Neil Young song, and talk about the spoon, heroin, and introduce the spoon.
We should lead with heroin.
It starts inside of us, everyone. Yes, it starts, you look outside, but start decluttering yourself. Like if you're a coach listening to this episode, or if you're a scrum master listening to this episode, if you're an RTE listening to this episode, if you're a functional manager in an agile context listening to this episode, I am telling you, the first place, you are cluttered. We've gotten, we have gotten lost as an agile community. And it's not too late for us to turn around. Our organizations need this mindset, this nugget of wisdom that we can offer, of lean thinking, etc. But we're going to lose entire credibility if we continue along the path we're at.
Be aggressive with yourself and with your team of what can you cut? What can you get rid of? What can you change? So that is my goal. That is my hope as Bob and I sit here and record this on December 7th, that you start to have a plan. And in 2025, you just start just like shredding all of that crap and you get it out of there and your life gets smoother and easier.
Entry music. Da, 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 da. It's the Bob and Josh Show.
We are going to go back to our roots a little bit. Many of our
All right.
listeners joined us when we were all agile all the time. Then we changed, we evolved, we grew. It's been, 300 plus episodes, and we, in the past couple years, have decided to focus more on leadership. But something struck a chord within me, Bob, and I know I've seen the same chord struck with you of late. A lot of your content, a lot of your writing has been about the agile world and roles and responsibilities and how that's evolving.
Yeah.
And it hit me all of a sudden. I can't piece together all of the catalysts that put me in the spot where the matrix came into my brain and I realized in the world of agile there is no spoon.
Is there a fork?
No, there's no fork. There's nothing. That's the whole point. But yet, and we'll tease this out. We'll explain a little bit more. But the reality is there's this whole infrastructure. There's all these things. There's all these roles and responsibilities and businesses and industries and events and conferences and speakers and all this stuff that has happened around something that was built by developers for developers to become more efficient, more effective. And then this like large matrix-like thing surrounded it. And now it's almost bigger than life. And there's talks of 2.0 and 3.0 and all these different flavors and all of these things. And the thing that I'm hopeful we can do with today's episode is just get people to realize that there is no spoon. And that it really is about the simple, basic things. And yes, we've talked about this in the past. We've talked about it maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4, 5, 6 times, but it's still a thing. And I believe, Bob, you and I have a capability and a responsibility to even help people navigate this.
I would agree with the responsibility part. It really, I've talked a lot about going back to basics. I was around at the basics, and there were a bunch of people around. The manifesto was written at the time. I was doing Agile stuff before the manifesto was written. And I remember when the manifesto came out, and it was developers. So there were 17 signatories. 16 of them were hardcore developers. One of them was an automation test developer. Brian Merrick was the one different person. All of them were seasoned developers. So no one was under 30, I think, at the time. So at the time, they weren't novice developers. They were experienced developers. And they were looking for they were looking at patterns that they had experienced that worked. And they were also ranting against the anti-patterns. The other day Ed Jordan wrote a book. I don't know if you probably ever read it, Josh, called Death March.
I've heard of it, yeah.
and Death March was and Death March sounds snarky or whatever, but it's no joke. Back in those days, waterfall projects failed frequently, and you were on these death marches where you worked overtime. It was forced overtime. There was forced effort. When it got late and you were behind, you had to work harder. You miss your families, uh, and so it was this awful. It was this awful sort of dynamic of building software. You took these people who were sort of geeky like me and who really enjoyed writing software, and then you ripped their freaking souls out and turned them into a machine, uh, and made them appear mechanistic, and you lost the joy. And so Agile was this a response in many ways about quality, about planning, but about getting, about simplicity, of really getting to the simplicity of like meeting the customer. Another part of Death Marches was the fact that another one of these jokes is you would deliver a project, you would work on a project for multiple years and hand it to a customer, and they'd be like, I don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can you imagine Metacasters? Can you imagine? I'm not joking. I mean, maybe that happens in microcosms today, but I'm talking about 50 people to 1,000 people working on a project for 2 years, and then handing it to someone and working their butts off, like under death march conditions, and then someone is like, either the market conditions changed, or we don't need that anymore, or I never asked for that. And so the guys were trying to not talk about, the agile industrial complex, or not talking about Scrum, but just talking about better ways to do technical work.
Yeah, one of the things that I find shockingly common is when I get called in to help an organization and I'm having a conversation with the engineering organization, whatever it is, development team, and I ask them what is a relatively simple question, but I believe the matrix, the infrastructure, everything has confused this. Is I ask, what are we here to do?
Yep.
And you get all of these other answers like build software, deliver a project or whatever it is, work together, be a team, do all of these things. And I so often, unfortunately, too often have to pull people back and say, our job, our whole existence is to deliver as much value as possible to the customer as often as possible. And oh, by the way, if we can do that with minimum cost, that's even better. So trying to boil it back to, we're trying to do the most with the least. And that ruffles everybody's feathers because everybody feels like with the least is one of those things that really gets people fired up. It's like, oh, well, you're just trying, like, you don't want to build quality software. You don't want to hire good people. You want to do that. And it's not about that. It's simple understanding of how the world of business works. And usually the less you spend to build something, the faster you get it to market. And the less it takes to make changes, the faster you can get those fixes into market or those new features and all those things. And then that's where this whole, and I'm a huge believer in craft and the craft of software, but there also can be this like overcrafting where nothing else matters but the craft, and shipping, the common thing that we've all heard whenever you're playing in the agile space, and executives live in this world of fear where like, oh, we'll ship it whenever we're done, it'll get shipped.
Right.
And that disconnect, and the Agile Manifesto never intended to not deliver value. It was meant to optimize that whole delivery of value to customers. Bob talked about getting things to customers as quickly as possible. And so that's where, again, it's just this growing thing, and there's this evolution that's happening within our realm and our space. And I even talked to friends that have asked me the question of like, hey, what do you think about Agile? What do you think about Scrum? I was out to dinner with a friend, and we have a common friend that we worked with before that was the director of Scrum Masters and product owners at a job that we worked at. And they said, I sat down with this person and I said to them, I think maybe you need to find a different like job because I'm worried that your role is going to go away. I think Agile has run its course and it's probably not the best future for you as a leader to be focused explicitly on these roles. And that kind of hurt me a little bit, but I couldn't argue with it. And I think that is because this growing infrastructure, this growing matrix of Agile has a life cycle. And it's become, I'm not sure what it has become, but it's become more than it needs to be and isn't delivering what it could or should.
I like the term. I think it was Coburn, one of the signatories that talked about the Agile industrial complex. And that's the certification community falls under that. The tooling community falls under that. People trying to make the coaching community falls under that. I fall under that. Right? We're doing Agile to make a living. We're doing Agile to sell it. We're doing Agile to install it. The safe clearly falls under that. An Agile industrial complex is not. It's a counterpoint to the very essence of what Agile was. What you were talking about when you were talking about shipping, I was thinking about simplicity. So another thing back then in the day, and again we've lost it, is, and I wrote about this years ago. There's some remarkable products. These are old Metacasters. I apologize. These are sort of dinosaur applications, but they're good examples. There was something called Word Perfect, which was a word processor. There was something called WordStar, which was a word processor. The DB2, DB3 was one of the original PC databases. Unix. I don't know if everyone knows it, but Unix was developed. If anyone's ever heard of Unix, the original Unix operating system was written by less than 7 people that worked for Bell Labs. And if you look at Unix and you look at the functionality of the operating system, if you look at the functionality, it was simple things like piping. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is you could pipe the output from one thing as the input into another. So you could put all these utilities together in a myriad of combinations to do things in the shell, and there were shell programs and things like that. And that was created by less than 7 people. I think actually the shell was created by 1 person. And things. So my point is very large, useful. Now what we do is we throw people at things. We throw tens of people or hundreds of people at something. The other thing is features. I remember when I was at EMC, we were building, and this is I'm pretty sure this is true today, not just at EMC but in general. But we measured what parts of our apps were used by people. So we were doing applications to manage storage devices. And it came back like 34% of what we built was actually used by human beings. So our waste factor was like what, 60 or 58, 56%. Mm. So over half of what we built, no one cared about. It was like bloatware. There was once a paper done by Microsoft Word, and less than 20% of Word is used by human beings on the planet Earth, of all of the features in Word. So that means 80% of Word is bloatware. And bloatware is not just have a one-time cost. It has a reoccurring maintenance cost, a reoccurring test cost, a reoccurring release, right? Like when you're releasing it, etc. And so we've lost simplicity. Like there's sort of release often to customers, but also listen to them. Trust your gut. Don't guess. Right? Don't guess, ask them what they want. And don't get, a lot of that bloatware is people assuming, like VPs and CEOs and CTOs making decisions about the construction. So, and that's not part of the Agile industrial complex. That's part of getting away from these core principles of agility. And we've lost that. And we're paying, I think we're paying the penalty for that.
Yeah, I think a couple of drivers, and again, these are things that we've talked about a lot, is so much of what doesn't happen is saying no, of
Yeah,
having a good product leader, just a good product function, whether it's a product leader, product people, whatever it is, of really understanding what we should and shouldn't build and what value is asked for. And I've been there. I've been in those death marches to build features that we know no one, a very small subset of our customer base, mentioned that it would be nice or it would be a thing that would be cool. And maybe it's something that they do once a year, once every couple years, but it's just not. So then there's all this effort poured into building this one-off thing that's special that you launch into market, and then the reality is that you do this over and over again. And yes, you've made one customer, a couple customers happy, but then the rest of your customer base starts to say like, hey, wait a minute, like nothing, you haven't shipped anything of use of late.
exactly.
Why am I continuing to pay you for this when it hasn't gotten better? But there's other things over here that sure look like they've gotten better. Maybe I should give that a try. And that's that cost. That's the thing that I see. So I see two disconnects. I see within organizations that don't operate in a lowercase agile manner is they don't have a strong product function. So they don't have a clear, confident direction of what they should be building. And the confidence is the thing that, listen, I know a large portion of our customer base is just going to love this and it's going to be amazing. So really knowing the customers, just like Bob said, not enough companies really know the customer and what they need, how they operate, what's going to make their lives better on a daily basis. And then the other piece, the other side of the coin that isn't known well enough is for the product development part of the organization. They don't really understand how the business works, how what we ship, what we build, everything that is needed to go to get that into a customer's hands for them to realize the value that is created. They are simply, whether it's by choice or they've been partitioned off, just said like, hey, over here and do what you're told and build what you're asked to do, and just like don't think about it. We're going to tell you what to build. And that disconnect, often driven by a lack of a strong product function, slowly but sometimes quickly just puts slime in the ice machine, and everything slows down and tightens up, and you're getting lapped by customers. And so much of that is just created by the fog of the complex that we are in and all the things, and you start to focus on everything that's not just shipping value to customers.
I'm going to not disagree, Josh, but maybe add on to what you were saying. I, in the beginning, in XP, customers were typically at the table, the planning table, with user stories, with cards, with the teams. And these were customers that were making requests. Maybe not all of the customers, but customers. And so, and the teams actually, so developers back then actually understood the customers very often better than the product folks understood customers, or at least the developers who'd been around a while. And I remember back then, thinking when I was handed something in a waterfall fashion, I'm like, that the customers don't need that. Right. So someone who was clueless about usage, sometimes product folks didn't even understand how the product really worked, right? Because they may have joined the company later. So there were three other product folks before them, and they didn't really know. But they were told that they had to create lists and they had to make elbows and keys click and get releases out the door. So they were just making shit up. And as developers, if you're unempowered, or if you don't think anyone cares about your opinion, then you're just going to do it. I can't. There were quite a few times where I'm like, this is the stupidest thing on the planet, but I'm going to just do it. I'll give you what you asked for, not what you need. I could have given you, if you'd asked me for my opinion as a developer, I would have actually given it to you. And I think it would have largely, most of the time, it would have complemented your thinking. and helped us make better decisions for our customers. A lot of developers in the day had, they weren't just totally focused on software. They had a broader ownership mindset. Like they were trying to create successful apps. Unix, the Unix folks had to, they didn't just write software. They had to think, now arguably their users were technical, but they had to think about usage models and things like that, and what would work and what wouldn't work, and how folks would use it, and complexity and simplicity. I think I don't think that I think the developers got complacent over time. Again, we got back to that same point, like in the early Agile, we had this wonderful collaboration where business folks and developers worked together. I don't know how long it lasted, not long enough. And then we went back to the norm where people just tell us what to do, and they don't ask us for our opinion. Uh, and they don't collaborate with the developers. You become automatons. You become what? You become card implementers,
Yeah.
as opposed to whatever. But I think developers are more than capable of that. They were, and they are today. We're
Yeah.
just not. Maybe part of getting back would be to activate that again.
Yeah. I see a lot of successful companies that live in a world where the people building the product also consume the product. So you think of some of the more successful products that you see out there, and the engineering cultures that support them. Spotify is one of those things. Everybody that works there listens to music, and they probably use that app. So they really understand the customer. GitHub is very much like that. One of the newer ones, PostHog, that builds analytics software and things like that. They are consumers of their own products. So they've been able to shorten the gap and the chasm between knowing your customers and building for them is very narrow, because they can just take that step over and they're using the product in the real world. Unfortunately, so much more of the technology space is littered with companies where they aren't adjacent to the actual consumption of what they're building. So they're building something, but they don't live in the world. So for instance, I have built software for self-storage facilities. I've never run one. I've been in one. I've been in a couple, but I don't really know what that's like. And so what I've seen, what has happened is, oh, that chasm is so giant. I can't possibly expect you to understand what that means. So you stay over there. I don't want you to try and figure this out. We have this small group of people that are going to go figure it out, and then they have all the answers. And okay, like maybe you achieve something. You can achieve something if then that knowledge is transferred to the teams really effectively, really well, then you have a chance. But too often it's just like, oh, we are the ones that know and understand this product, this marketing space, this whatever it is. So just like, we have all the answers, and no one can have all of the answers. It's just impossible to have all of the answers. It's too hard. It's too complex. But in an effort to optimize and not waste people's time, we end up de-optimizing and wasting people's time by asking them to build things that if we just were able to leverage the power of their brains, we'd be in a much better spot.
Agile is, I mean, the essence, and I'm not trying to represent XP, or I'm just saying Metacasters. I was actively, I grew up as a developer in my professional career, and then became a leader. And I was very active as a developer leader, a technology and architect, when Agile was unfolding. And so I remember the essence of people implementing. So there's guidance, there's manifestos, there's books written. And then I was pretty active in the community as people were taking these ideas and saying, this is kind of cool, trying it out. And then we lost it. And we've lost simplicity. We've lost collaboration. We lost, it wasn't a thing. It wasn't Scrum. I mean, I can't tell you how many, I see a post on LinkedIn every day almost that talks about retrospectives. right? How to run a retrospective. What are the games for retrospective? Miro boards with a gazillion retrospectives. I I just think of that. I mean, there's nothing. It talked about reflection, but now there's 8,000 ways to run a retrospective. Uh, just figure out how to run a retrospective in your team, in your organization, right? It's called lessons learned, and do something about it. It's still to this day, we have a billion ways to run a retrospective, but one of the root problems still to this day is no one does anything with the retrospective results. It boggles my freaking mind. Like, again, if you go back to basics, you don't do something if you're going to ignore it. It's called waste. So just do one small thing. But there is no spoon. I was thinking of it before Josh brought up this topic for our recording today. I've been thinking that, to go back to mindset, the thing that comes back to me is we need just to go back to agile mindset, uh, and then start constructing. I was talking to someone in a moose herd the other day, a lean coffee moose herd, and I was saying, let's stop talking about the frameworks. Let's start decomposing the frameworks. So I wish we would, and not everyone liked that idea, but I'm like, I'm so tired of talking about Scrum. I'm so tired of talking about Kanban. Why don't we talk about the patterns necessary for us to kick ass, to do good work, to delight our customers on an individual, organization, team by team basis, right? Stop talking about SAFe. Stop talking about scaling. Stop talking about agile gobbledygook. It doesn't matter. Stop talking about how many letters are after your name. If you're not delivering, it doesn't matter, right? There's these essence points, and we've lost it. There's a whole genre of coaches out there that are trying to teach people. I try to deprogram coaches sometimes, or I coach coaches, and they're out of work now. There are so many agile coaches that are out of work now, and they think their job is to coach people to become agile. And it's not. It's not. That's a red herring. That means, oh, I need to coach people to be scrummy. I need to coach people to know how to, whatever it is, or to be Kanban-y, or I need to coach people to write a good user story. Doesn't freaking matter. No. I mean, those are means to an end. But your idea, simplification, get people working together so they're reducing waste, developers and customers working together, getting to the simplest possible thing, iterating quickly, showing it to them. Is this what you want? And then listening. Is this what, and not only understanding teams, understanding the business, but the business understanding teams, understanding how hard technology is. The information passage goes both ways. But it's not. We're making it too hard. I just ranted, Josh. So please,
that was perfect, because I was going to transition into, okay, cool. Bob and I have been talking about the things that are wrong. I'm listening to this. I'm watching this, YouTube, Spotify, wherever I am. What do I do? Bob just gave you the answers. So often you hear about some of the best developers are the ones that delete the most code. The best commits are the ones where it's deleting a bunch of code, simplifying the code, removing redundancies.
Yep.
Do that with your process. Take a real, honest, hard look at everything that's happening within your organization, everything that's required to ship value to the customer, and look at what is in the way, what is slowing down, what doesn't add value, what has become a habit that just kind of sticks around and hangs around and gets in the way, and you and your team trip and stumble over it, but you just keep doing it because it's the thing you do, or it's what the process says that you should do. So the challenge that I would have to everybody watching and listening is, in the remainder of this year, you have, 3-ish weeks before the year is over. And as you head into the next year, what are the things that you can start to line up that you're going to delete? What's all the extra stuff? You go back to the simplest things. We talk about, how do I deliver the most value with the least amount of effort? Waste. That's exactly what waste is all about. So it's not just that mindset within the business world of like shipping things as cost effectively as possible, but that is it. That is the thing. That's what we're trying to do. So understand that your job is to deliver as much as you can by spending the least. And that doesn't mean you're cheap. You don't pay people. I'm not suggesting that. People will read into those words, but it's not about that. It is what is the least that we can do to deliver the most for not only our customers, but for ourselves.
I was going to jump in, Josh. I mean, yes. And everyone, don't start with your business. Start in your own freaking head. Like, wake up one morning and shake your head. Throw out a couple books. If you have a product owner book by Bob Galen, throw it out. It starts inside of us, everyone. Yes, it starts, you look outside, but start decluttering yourself. Like, if you're a coach listening to this episode, or if you're a scrum master listening to this episode, if you're an RTE listening to this episode, if you're a functional manager in an agile context listening to this episode, I am telling you, the first place, you are cluttered. You are cluttered with crap, agile crap that is not serving you and is not serving the organization. So get rid of your own crap first. Then start helping decrapifying those around you. But we have too much, and it's good crap. So don't be too sad. I mean, it's crap, but it's well-intentioned crap maybe, or it was, my book was well-intentioned, but we need to stop it because we've gotten away. We have gotten lost as an agile community. And it's not too late for us to turn around. Our organizations need this mindset, this nugget of wisdom that we can offer, of lean thinking, etc. But we're going to lose entire credibility if we continue along the path we're at.
Yeah, I want to highlight that point about well-intentioned. There are a million things that are well-intentioned that blow up in your face. Happens all the time. Where, and I firmly believe that most of the effort that's out there is well-intentioned, but there also becomes a point where even well-intentioned people recognize it's doing more harm than good, but like, oh, well, it's well-intentioned. So it just kind of keeps going, or just keeps, it keeps having legs and it lives on and creates more problems. This is what Bob and I are talking about. Be aggressive with yourself and with your team of what can you cut? What can you get rid of? What can you change? So that is my goal. That is my hope as Bob and I sit here and record this on December 7th, that you start to have a plan. And in 2025, you just start just like shredding all of that crap and you get it out of there and your life gets smoother and easier. It's hard, but you can do it. All right, Bob. Fork it.
I was speechless there for a second, Josh. I don't know what happened. Right. I was waiting. I was waiting for you to drop the mic, but it's my job. All right. So from beautiful downtown Cary, North Carolina,
and beautiful downtown Fuquay Arena, North Carolina,
I'm Cut the Crap Bob Galen,
and I'm boring old Josh Anderson.
Shake
and bake.
Take care, y'all.